The storm never ended on Helion 3. Thick gray clouds rolled endlessly across the sky, and lightning danced between them like the anger of old gods. The air smelled of ash and rain, and the ground was cracked and hard as bone. Commander Lyra stood at the edge of the ruined city once known as Fort Helion. From here she could see miles of destroyed buildings and fallen towers. Once this place must have been full of life, homes, lights, laughter. Now only silence and shadows remained. Behind her, the Zinthar camp was in motion. Hundreds of soldiers worked to repair damaged drones, build defenses, and scan for movement. The previous night's attacks had shaken everyone. 3 patrol squads were gone. Entire vehicles had vanished without a trace. Even their best stealth drones were being destroyed before sending a signal. The enemy had no army. No ships, no heavy weapons, just one man, and yet he was winning. Lyra looked down at her data tablet, which displayed a map of the city. Red marks showed lost patrols. Green marks showed search zones. They looked like small sparks spreading across the map, but most of them had gone dark. She turned to her second officer, Taran Vol, who stood quietly behind her. His usually confident face looked uneasy. "Commander," Taran said, "we have confirmed it. The attacks are coordinated. Whoever he is, he knows how to fight an organized army." Lyra's metallic eyes glowed softly in the dim light. "That should be impossible," she said calmly. "Humans were primitive. Their armies used old technology and emotion-driven tactics. They were not capable of matching us." Taran hesitated before replying. "Perhaps this one is different." She looked up at him sharply. "No, Taran, he is just a remnant. A relic clinging to the past, and relics can be broken." Still, her voice lacked its usual certainty. That evening, the search resumed. Drones hovered above the ruins, shining bright beams into the shadows. Soldiers walked in teams of 3, scanning every corner. Hours passed. The wind howled through broken windows. A thick fog rolled between the shattered buildings, swallowing sound. Then one soldier stopped. "Commander, we found something," he said through the communicator. Lyra ordered the live feed to be shown on her wrist display. The screen flickered, showing an old stone wall. On it was a mark, the same human symbol as before, a blue globe with wings. But this time, beneath it, words were written in rough English. "You don't understand what you're waking." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "He wants us to fear him," she said quietly. "He wants to control the game." Taran replied, "He already does, Commander. He knows every path, every ambush point." She ignored him. "Prepare the walkers. We will flush him out." 2 massive mechanical walkers, each taller than a small building, began their slow advance through the ruins. Their heavy steps shook the ground. Drones circled above them, scanning for movement. Lyra watched from a command platform, arms folded behind her back. The plan was simple: force the human to reveal himself. But the human was already watching them. From the upper floors of a broken skyscraper, Captain Aaron Vale observed the walkers through a cracked visor. His armor was old, scratched, and patched with metal plates, but still functional. The blue glow from his visor reflected on the dusty glass. He had been alone for years. He had watched the stars fade and the machines rust. But now the invaders had come, and he had no intention of letting them claim the last memory of humanity. "Zinthar command pattern confirmed," he whispered to himself, listening to their transmissions through a hacked comm channel. Predictable. He loaded a small EMP grenade into his launcher and aimed. His hands were steady, his breathing calm. The grenade flew silently across the night and struck the leg of the nearest walker. The explosion was not loud and just a sharp blue flash, but the walker froze instantly, its systems dead. Before the other could react, Vale fired again. The second walker stumbled, its sensors blinded. Zinthar soldiers panicked, shouting through their communicators. "Ambush, it's him! The human is here!" Vale moved like a ghost, already gone from his position. He ran through the ruins with silent steps, taking shortcuts through collapsed tunnels and broken rooftops. He knew every inch of this city. It was his home, his battlefield, and his promise. At the Zinthar camp, alarms blared. Lyra's calm mask began to crack as reports came in. Damaged walkers, vanished soldiers, failing drones. "Track his position," she commanded. Taran worked quickly. "He's moving through Sector 9. "No, wait, he's gone again. How?" Lyra snapped. He's using our signal bursts against us, Terran said. Every time we scan for him, he follows the signal path and disappears. He knows how our technology works, Lyra clenched her jaw. That means he studied us. He understands our systems. Commander, Terran said softly. He might have studied everything. Hours later, Lyra went out herself. She didn't trust the reports anymore. Surrounded by her personal guard, she walked through the ruins under the pale light of the twin moons. The silence of the city pressed down on her. Broken walls, faded human signs, and the distant sound of wind were all that remained. She found herself standing before an old statue half buried in rubble, a human soldier made of bronze. The face was worn away, but the posture was strong, upright, proud. Lyra stared at it for a moment. Something inside her shifted, curiosity, maybe even respect. "Commander," said one of her guards suddenly. Motion detected. A faint figure moved through the fog ahead, tall, human-shaped, carrying a weapon. "Light him up," she ordered. The soldiers opened fire. Blue plasma bolts filled the night, tearing through dust and concrete. But when the smoke cleared, the figure was gone. Then from behind them a voice spoke. Calm. Quiet. Very close. "You should have left this place." Lyra spun around. The man stood in the shadows, only his glowing visor visible. He didn't attack. He didn't run. He just looked at her. Her soldiers raised their weapons again, but she lifted a hand. "Hold your fire." The man tilted his head slightly. "You're their leader." "I am Commander Lyra Cthulhu of the Zinthar Empire," she said proudly. "You are trespassing on Imperial ground." The man's voice was even. "This ground belonged to my people long before your empire existed. Your people destroyed themselves," she said coldly. "You burned your own world." The visor flickered faintly as if reflecting emotion. "We built more than we destroyed. You just came too late to see it." Before she could reply, he threw something at her feet in a small metallic device and vanished into the fog. The device beeped once, then projected a hologram. It showed the old Earth flag, blue and green, shining softly in the dark. Then it faded away. Back at camp, Lyra stood silently in her command tent. The hologram image still played in her mind. That man, that human, had not acted like a savage. He had spoken with calm purpose and strength. "Commander," Terran said carefully, "our troops are losing confidence. They say he's not a man but a ghost." "A legend." Lyra's voice was steady. "He's no ghost. He's a soldier." Terran looked surprised. "Then what are your orders?" "Pull the outer patrols back," she said. "We'll change tactics. No more large groups. We'll move like he does, small, silent, precise." Terran hesitated. "Commander, are you suggesting we copy human tactics?" Lyra turned to him, eyes sharp. "If we want to win, we must understand what makes him dangerous. And that means thinking like him." For the first time she admitted, if only to herself, that the human was not weak. That night Lyra could not sleep. She stood alone watching the storm from her command post. Lightning lit up the ruins, and in one flash she thought she saw a figure on a distant rooftop, tall, motionless, watching her. She blinked, and he was gone. But she smiled faintly. "You want a war, human?" she whispered. "Then you will have one." For 3 days the war on Helion 3 turned into a ghost hunt. The Zinthar soldiers searched every ruin, every tunnel and every abandoned building, but they found nothing except destroyed drones and empty shells. The human, Captain Aaron Vale, was everywhere and nowhere. He attacked supply convoys, sabotaged scanners, and vanished into the fog before anyone could see him. Each strike was perfect, clean, and silent. It felt less like war and more like the ruins themselves were fighting back. Commander Lyra Cthulhu watched the reports pile up on her command screen. Every red alert made her frown slightly more. Her silver armor looked dull now, scratched from battle, but her pride still shone bright. She refused to believe a single human could defeat her. "Commander," said Taranvol, her second officer, "the men are frightened. They call him the Phantom of Helion. Some believe he cannot die." Lyra didn't look up. "All living things can die, Terran. Fear only makes him stronger." "But he fights alone," Terran said softly. "No food supply, no allies, no backup. Yet he strikes as if he knows where we will be before we move." "How?" Lyra finally turned toward him. "Because he's thinking. Not like a soldier, but like a hunter." She paused for a moment, then added, and a hunter always leaves tracks. That night she went out alone with only a small scouting unit. Her soldiers tried to stop her, but she silenced them with a single command. "I do not hide behind ranks," she said. "If he wants to face me, I will give him that chance." They moved silently through the ruins under the silver light of the moons. The buildings rose like black skeletons around them. Each step echoed softly on the cracked ground. Lyra's visor scanned the area, displaying faint traces of motion. Nothing clear, but enough to show someone was watching. Then she saw it. On a wall near the old central plaza, words were painted in faded white. "You still don't understand." Lyra stared at it for a long moment. "He leaves these messages for a reason," she murmured. "He wants me to see them." Suddenly, one of her soldiers shouted, "Contact!" Blue light flashed from the rooftops. A drone exploded overhead. Lyra's squad took cover behind debris. The human moved through the shadows above them, quick and silent. "Don't fire blindly," Lyra ordered. "He's testing us." A grenade landed near her, but instead of an explosion, it released thick smoke that filled the air. Visibility dropped to 0. Lyra switched to thermal view. Nothing. Only the heat of her own soldiers. Then, through the haze, a voice echoed. "Calm and steady. You think numbers make you strong?" She turned sharply. "Show yourself, human." Silence. Then the voice again from another direction. "You think logic wins every war?" Lyra gritted her teeth. "I win because I adapt. Because I learn." A faint laugh came from the dark. "Good. Then you're already learning what it means to be human." A sudden flash, a movement to her left when she fired. Her plasma bolt hit nothing but smoke. By the time the air cleared, he was gone. Back at the command camp, Terran tried to speak carefully. "Commander, with respect, we should withdraw to orbit. We can report to High Command and return with a full division." Lyra stood silently for a moment, then replied, "If we leave now, the Empire will see it as weakness, and weakness is death. But what if this human—" She cut him off. "He is one soldier. I am commander of the Zinthar fleets. If I cannot defeat one man, I am unworthy of this title." Terran bowed his head. "As you wish, Commander." When he left, Lyra remained alone in her tent. She stared at the holographic image of Earth on her display. A blue planet, gone for centuries, destroyed by human wars. And yet from that lost world came someone strong enough to challenge her. She whispered quietly to herself, "What kind of world made you?" Miles away, Aaron Vale sat inside the ruins of an old human command bunker. The lights flickered weakly, powered by whatever energy he could salvage. His hands were dirty, his armor dented, but his eyes were sharp and calm. He placed an old photograph on the table, a picture of a family standing in front of a green field. His family, his home, he spoke softly as if to the picture. "I promised I'd protect what's left." His scanner beeped. Zinthar troops were approaching from the north again. He sighed quietly. They never learn. He stood up, picked up his weapon, an ancient kinetic rifle modified with human ingenuity, and disappeared into the storm once more. The next day, Lyra launched a full operation. She ordered all patrols to converge on the center of the ruins, a wide circular area surrounded by collapsed skyscrapers. "We will smoke him out," she said firmly. "He cannot hide forever." But Aaron Vale had already planned for this. He had rigged the central plaza with traps, not explosive but clever. Old motion sensors connected to energy pulses that created false signals. When the Zinthar scanners swept the area, they picked up a dozen false readings. Soldiers fired in every direction. Drones shot at shadows. The more they fought, the more confused they became. From the rooftops, Vale watched them fall into chaos. He didn't smile, but his eyes hardened with focus. When one of the Zinthar transports tried to retreat, he disabled it with a single shot. The ship crashed softly into the ruins, its engines failing. "Your logic can't save you here," he muttered under his breath. Lyra arrived at the battlefield moments later. She saw her troops scattering, their formation broken. For the first time, true anger filled her voice. "Regroup," she shouted. "Hold your lines." Then she heard it, a single rifle shot. The blast didn't hit her, but it destroyed the weapon of the soldier beside her, saving his life by forcing him to duck. Lyra froze. That shot wasn't meant to kill. It was a message. She looked up and saw him. The human stood on a broken bridge above the plaza. Dust swirled around him. The wind tugged at his coat. He looked like a piece of history that refused to die. She raised her voice. "Captain Aaron Vale." He looked down at her, calm and expressionless. "You hide behind shadows and traps," she called. "If you believe you are strong, face me." He tilted his head slightly. "I don't need to prove strength to someone who doesn't understand it." "Then teach me," she said coldly. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he nodded once. "Tomorrow at dawn, in the ruins of the old central tower." Before she could reply, he turned and walked away into the storm. That night, Lyra stood alone again, looking out at the distant horizon. Her soldiers rested, exhausted and shaken. Terran approached quietly. "Commander, you cannot mean to face him alone." "It's too dangerous." Lyra's voice was calm. "He challenged our pride. I must answer. But he—" She looked at him sharply. "Terran, this is no longer about victory. It's about understanding what kind of strength defies extinction." Terran bowed his head. "Then may the stars watch over you." At dawn, the sky of Helion 3 glowed faintly orange. The ruins of the old central tower stood tall against the wind, its top broken, its walls cracked. Lyra walked through the rubble, her armor gleaming in the morning light. She carried only a plasma blade at her side. Aaron Vale was already there, waiting. His visor was dimmed, revealing tired blue eyes that still carried fire. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Lyra said quietly, "Why do you fight, human? You cannot win. You are alone." Aaron looked at her steadily. "I fight because someone has to remember what humanity was. We made mistakes, but we never stopped fighting for what we believed in." Lyra tilted her head. "Belief, hope, emotion, those things make you weak." He smiled faintly. "Maybe, but they also make us human." He raised his weapon. "Let's finish this." The wind howled across the ruins of Helion 3. Black clouds rolled across the sky and red lightning flashed far in the distance. The old human city was now nothing more than broken towers and dust. In the center of this silent wasteland stood Commander Lyra Cthulhu, her armor cracked and burned from the long battle. Around her lay the remains of her fallen soldiers and shattered drones. The Zinthar army was gone, and across from her stood Captain Aaron Vale, the last human warrior. His face was hidden under a damaged helmet, his armor scorched and patched with torn fabric. He held his staff-like weapon tightly, watching her every move. There was no hatred in his eyes, only quiet focus. For a long moment, neither moved. The only sound was the storm's roar. Then Lyra spoke, her voice cold but trembling slightly. "You fought well, human. But this ends here." Aaron didn't answer. He simply took a slow step forward, his boots crunching the ash underfoot. Lyra activated her plasma blade, its blue light cutting through the darkness. The weapon hummed like a living thing, hot and ready to strike. "You are the last of your kind," she said, circling him. "You should have hidden, not fought. You cannot win against an empire." Aaron finally spoke, his voice calm and deep. "I'm not fighting for victory," he said. "I'm fighting to remind you who we were." And then the battle began. Lyra moved first, fast as lightning. Her blade sliced through the air, but Aaron ducked, the plasma heat grazing past his helmet. He swung his staff low, aiming for her legs, forcing her to leap back. They exchanged blows again and again, sparks flying as metal met energy. The duel was fierce and silent, each move calculated. Lyra had the advantage in speed and strength. Her alien body was built for endurance, her armor powered by energy cells. But Aaron had something else, experience and instinct. Every strike he made carried the weight of centuries of human warfare, lessons passed down from countless battles and sacrifices. Minutes passed, turning into an eternity. The two fighters moved across the ruins, over shattered walls through smoke and falling debris. Lyra struck hard, her blade searing through a metal column where Aaron had just stood. "You fight with passion," she said between breaths. "But passion blinds you. That is why your species fell." Aaron stepped out from the dust, breathing heavily. His voice was steady. "Maybe, but passion also made us dream, build, and stand back up when everything fell apart. You wouldn't understand that." Her eyes narrowed. "Emotion is weakness," he met her gaze. "Then you've never truly been strong." Lyra shouted in frustration and charged. Their weapons clashed again. The ground cracked beneath them as they fought, each strike echoing through the empty city. Aaron was tired. His strength was fading, but he refused to fall. Every time he stumbled, he remembered Earth, Oceans, mountains, cities full of laughter. All gone now. That memory gave him power. Finally, Lyra landed a heavy hit. Her blade cut through part of his shoulder armor, and he fell to one knee. She raised her weapon high to finish it, but something in his eyes stopped her. He looked up, battered and bleeding, yet still unbroken. There was no fear, only determination. Aaron spoke quietly. Strength isn't what you were born with. It's what you become when you've lost everything. Before she could react, he rolled aside and swung his staff upward. It struck her hand, sending the plasma blade flying. She stumbled backward, shocked. He moved fast, disarming her completely. The staff pressed against her throat, holding her still. The battle was over. They stood there in the silence, the storm raging above. Lyra's breathing was uneven, her pride shattered. She could not understand how this one human, this fragile being, had defeated her. Aaron slowly lowered his weapon. He could have ended her life, but he didn't. Instead, he took a step back. You think mercy is weakness, he said softly. But mercy is strength. It's what made us human. She stared at him, disbelief and confusion in her eyes. You're sparing me? He nodded. You came here to destroy what's left of my people. I came here to protect it. If I kill you, I become what I'm fighting against. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt shame. She had fought countless wars, crushed rebellions, and conquered worlds. But never had she faced anyone like this. There was something terrifying in his humanity, something she couldn't defeat with power or logic. The storm began to calm. The rain fell softly over the ruins, washing away the blood and dust. Aaron turned and walked away, his steps slow but steady. Lyra called out after him, her voice breaking. Why fight when you knew you couldn't win? He stopped but didn't turn around. Because someone had to stand. Because every species needs a reminder that we existed. With that, he disappeared into the mist, leaving her alone among the ashes. Hours later, Lyra stood where he had fallen, staring at the shattered remains of the battlefield. Around her, her soldiers' ships began to arrive, searching for survivors. She said nothing to them. She only looked toward the horizon where the human had vanished. In her heart, something new began to grow. Respect. When the Zinthar fleet departed from Helion 3, Lyra ordered the area to be marked as forbidden. She told her officers that it was a cursed place not worth returning to. But deep inside she knew the truth. It wasn't cursed, it was sacred. That night, inside her command ship, she sat alone and replayed the battle in her mind. Every word the human said echoed in her thoughts. Strength isn't the absence of fear. It's fighting despite it. For the first time, she questioned her empire's beliefs. Were emotions truly weakness? Or were they the very thing that made life meaningful? Lyra looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, she knew, Aaron Vale was still alive. Maybe the last of his kind, but not defeated. She wondered what would become of her people if they ever learned the truth about humanity. Would they fear them or learn from them? A small spark of something she had never felt before flickered inside her. Hope. The next day, she gave her final order before returning to the Empire. All records of the human encounter are to be sealed, she said. If the Empire asks, we found nothing. Do you understand? Her officers obeyed without question, though some exchanged confused glances. None dared to ask why. As the fleet jumped into hyperspace, Helion 3 grew smaller behind them. In its silence, the wind carried only the echo of Aaron Vale's words. And deep in the mountains, unseen by the Empire's scanners, the last human warrior watched the departing ships. His armor was broken, his body exhausted, but his spirit burned bright. He whispered quietly into the storm, "We're still here." The words faded into the night, a promise not just to himself, but to all of humanity that had ever lived. The stars stretched endlessly before the great Zinthar fleet as it returned from the ruined world of Helion 3. The journey home was silent. No songs of victory were sung. No cheers filled the command decks. The soldiers spoke in low voices, glancing at their commander, Lyra Cathun, who had changed in ways they could not understand. Lyra stood alone on the viewing platform of her flagship. The cold glow of the stars reflected off her silver armor. She no longer felt the pride she once did after battle. Instead, her mind was filled with memories of the duel, the human's steady eyes, his quiet words, and the strange strength he carried even in defeat. He had spared her life. No Zinthar warrior would have done the same, That thought followed her like a shadow. When the fleet entered the Zinthar capital system, crowds gathered to welcome their heroes. The Emperor himself waited on the grand balcony of the Crystal Spire, expecting news of conquest. But when Lyra knelt before him, she said only 3 words. There were none. The Emperor frowned. None? No human survivors, she replied calmly. The planet was empty and lifeless. It was a lie, one she told without hesitation. For the first time in her life, Lyra lied not out of fear but out of conviction. She had seen something on Helion 3 that she wanted to protect, something the Empire would destroy if they knew it existed. The Emperor accepted her report without question. The matter was closed. Helion 3 was marked as a dead world, unworthy of further attention. Weeks passed. Lyra returned to her duties, but she was not the same. Her officers noticed her silence, her hesitation before giving cruel orders, and her strange new interest in the history of conquered species. One night in the privacy of her quarters, she opened the Galactic Archive and searched for a name long forgotten: humanity. Files appeared, filled with reports written by early Zinthar scouts. They described humans as reckless, emotional, and violent, a species that destroyed itself in wars and pollution. But hidden between those lines were things that caught her attention. Words like courage, compassion, and resilience. She watched ancient recordings of human life. Children running through cities, people helping one another during disasters, explorers launching ships into the stars with hope in their eyes. There was no weakness in those images. There was life. As days turned into months, Lyra began training her soldiers differently. She told them, "Do not rely only on machines. Learn to think. Learn to feel." Some laughed quietly at her words. Others listened, confused but curious. She began introducing old human strategies: unpredictable moves, deception, adaptability. Her troops became faster, sharper, and more creative. The Empire noticed. Her units started winning battles not through numbers, but through cleverness. When questioned about her methods, Lyra simply said, "I study the past to improve the future." But deep inside, she knew the truth. She was learning from him. On the far edge of the galaxy, far from the eyes of the Empire, Captain Aaron Vale still lived among the ruins of Helion 3. Seasons passed. Plants grew among the wreckage, and silence filled the empty cities. Aaron repaired his small shelter, kept his weapons ready, and watched the skies every night. He didn't know if the Zinthar would return, but he stayed ready. Humanity had fallen, yet as long as he lived, he carried its memory. He often spoke aloud to no one, as if speaking to the ghosts of his people. "Maybe someday," he said softly one night, looking at the stars, "someone out there will remember what we stood for." That someone was already remembering. Lyra continued her secret studies. She even began speaking privately to her younger officers about what she had learned. One of them, Lieutenant Saren, asked her one evening, "Commander, why are we learning these old methods? Why study extinct species?" Lyra looked at him, her golden eyes calm. "Because strength without understanding is only destruction." The humans knew that. They fell, yes, but not because they were weak. They fell because they cared too much for things worth protecting. Saren frowned. "But caring makes you vulnerable." Lyra smiled faintly. "It also makes you fight harder." Her words spread quietly among her troops. They began to call her the Teacher, a rare title among Zinthar commanders. Her forces became known for mercy, sparing enemies when possible, rebuilding colonies instead of burning them. Whispers began spreading through the Empire. "Lyra has gone soft." But others whispered something else. "Lyra fights like a human." One day, while studying the old data archives, Lyra found something unexpected: a hidden distress signal. It was faint, almost erased by time, but she recognized the pattern immediately. It came from Helion 3. Her heart pounded. It couldn't be. The human was still alive. She knew if the Empire found the signal, they would send a fleet to destroy it. Without hesitation, she deleted the record from the public system and copied the data to her private log. That night, she stood at the window of her quarters, watching the stars. "Still fighting," she whispered. "Still alive." Months later, the Empire faced a new rebellion. A small colony world had risen against Zinthar control, using guerrilla tactics and surprising strategy. To everyone's shock, the rebellion held its ground against overwhelming forces. When Lyra read the reports, her hands trembled slightly. The tactics, the traps, the unpredictability, the courage, they were human. No one else could have taught them that. She didn't tell the Empire what she suspected. Instead, she quietly redirected her fleet away from the area, pretending to follow other orders. She would not allow another Helion 3. Time moved forward. Years passed. The Zinthar Empire began to change, and slowly, quietly. New generations of soldiers trained under Lyra's philosophy. Honor mixed with emotion, logic guided by compassion. The idea spread like a seed carried by wind. Other commanders began to question old traditions. Some resisted, others embraced it. What started as a small spark in one warrior's heart began to glow across the stars. And one night, during a meeting of high commanders, Lyra finally spoke openly. "We call ourselves perfect," she said, her voice steady and clear. "But perfection without empathy is empty. I once faced a human who taught me that true strength is not in domination, it is in understanding. That is what will keep us alive." The hall was silent. Some glared in disbelief. Others lowered their eyes in respect. Lyra didn't care about their reactions. She had already chosen her path. Far away on Helion 3, Aaron Vale felt a strange peace for the first time in years. He stood on a cliff overlooking the ruins, watching the sunrise. Birds, small creatures adapted to the planet, flew through the glowing sky. He smiled faintly. The air was cold but alive. He didn't know that across the galaxy an alien commander carried his lessons, changing her people forever. He didn't need to know. His purpose had already been fulfilled. He whispered to the wind, "Maybe that's enough." In the years that followed, stories began to spread. Not just among the Zinthar, but among other species too. They told of a mysterious human warrior who once faced the strongest commander of the Empire, and won not by killing, but by teaching. Some said he vanished into the stars. Others claimed he became a spirit watching over the lost worlds of humankind, but Lyra knew the truth. He was real, and he was still out there, somewhere among the ashes and the stars. She sometimes looked to the night sky and said softly, "You were right, human. Weakness is not in feeling, it's in giving up." Years later, when Lyra's time came to an end, her final words to her students were simple. "Remember what we learned from the ones we called weak. Remember humanity." And as her ship drifted through the endless dark, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if the universe itself remembered the courage of one forgotten species. The Galactic Union Academy was quiet that morning. Golden light from the twin suns of Erevan Prime fell through the high crystal windows, touching rows of students who waited for the famous historian to speak. Holographic screens floated above the stage, showing old records of battles, cities, and creatures long gone. Dr. Vera Talon walked onto the stage with the calm pride of someone who knew her place in history. She was tall, elegant, and from the species known as the Xylarians, a race known for logic, patience, and long memory. Her skin shimmered faintly in silver tones, her voice smooth like calm water. When she spoke, every sound carried weight. "Today," she began, "we discuss the most mysterious extinct species in recorded history, the humans of Terra." The audience murmured. The word human still carried curiosity even after centuries. Few believed the ancient species had ever truly existed. Others thought they were just myths made by early explorers. But Vera had spent half her life studying them. She was certain of their story. They were, she continued, a paradox, capable of great kindness yet responsible for their own downfall. Their final transmissions from the Sol system ended over 500 years ago. Their world turned silent and no trace of them remained. History tells us extinction came not from an enemy, but from themselves. She raised her hand and the hologram shifted. Images appeared, crumbling cities, deserts where oceans once flowed, metal ruins scattered across a blue planet. "Humanity," Vera said softly, "is a reminder that intelligence without balance leads only to ashes." The crowd applauded. Her students nodded, taking notes, their eyes wide with fascination. To them, Vera was the ultimate authority on lost civilizations. But one student hesitantly raised his hand. "Professor," he asked, "some legends say a few humans might have escaped, that there could still be colonies." Vera smiled kindly, the way a teacher smiles at an eager but naive child. My dear, legends are the last breath of false hope. Humanity is history. Her words echoed through the hall like final judgment. That evening, Vera sat alone in her private observatory above the academy spire. Around her floated tiny lights, data nodes filled with all known human records. She studied them often, fascinated but detached. To her, humans were a puzzle already solved. Their brilliance was impressive, but their self-destruction was proof of her belief. They were not meant to last. Then came the message. Her console beeped once. An urgent transmission from the Union exploration fleet. She frowned. She rarely received direct calls from the fleet. The hologram shimmered, and the face of Commander Rhys Valen appeared, a grizzled Sarn officer whose people rarely smiled. "Dr. Talon," he greeted, "we found something. Unusual in Deep Sector Epsilon 9. Vera leaned forward. "Unusual in what way?" "We recovered a derelict ship, very old. Its hull markings match. Human design." Her silver eyes widened slightly. "That's impossible. Human technology hasn't been seen for centuries." "That's what we thought," Valen said. "But the ship's life support system is still running. And there's something else." He hesitated, his voice lowering. "We detected a faint life sign. Not alien, not machine. Biosignature, human." Vera stood from her chair, disbelief flashing across her calm features. "You're saying a human is alive? After 5 centuries? Valen nodded slowly. "We don't know how. The crew is afraid to touch the pod. You're the leading expert on human biology and culture. I'm asking you to come see for yourself." For a moment, Vera didn't answer. The idea seemed absurd. A living human. That would rewrite history and or destroy her reputation. But the scholar inside her, the seeker of truth, could not ignore it. "Send coordinates," she said finally. "I'll be there." 3 days later, Vera's shuttle descended through the gray mist of the Epsilon 9 nebula. The stars were hidden by swirling dust, and her ship trembled slightly as it entered the hangar of the exploration cruiser Halvern. The airlock opened with a hiss, and the cold, metallic scent of a working starship surrounded her. Commander Valen met her at the gate. "Glad you came," he said. "The pod's in Containment Bay 3. You'll want to see this yourself." They walked through dim corridors lined with glowing cables and humming engines. Crew members turned to watch her pass. The famous historian who declared humans extinct now walking toward proof they might not be. The bay doors slid open, revealing a large room filled with equipment. At the center rested a cryogenic pod, ancient but still glowing faintly blue. The hull was scratched and dented, but one word was still clear on the side, written in faded English letters. ESS Valor. Vera approached slowly. Inside the glass, a figure lay motionless. The body was lean but muscular, the face pale and calm. Short brown hair floated slightly in the preservation gel. Lines of data flickered on the pod's display. Heartbeat, temperature, oxygen. "All stable." Her voice trembled slightly. It's real," Valen crossed his arms. "We've checked everything. The DNA matches ancient human records perfectly." Vera placed her hand on the glass. For years she had studied human bones, old writings, recorded voices, but never flesh and breath. And now one lay before her, asleep through time itself. "What do you plan to do?" she asked quietly. Valen sighed. "We've been debating that. Some think we should leave him frozen. Others want to wake him." Vera turned sharply. "Wake him? That's reckless," he raised a brow. "You told the galaxy humans were history, Doctor. Don't you want to know if you were wrong?" The words hit her harder than she expected. She looked again at the sleeping man, wondering what kind of mind lay behind those closed eyes. What would a creature from a lost world say if he woke to find himself alone in a galaxy that had forgotten his kind? She took a deep breath. "Prepare the medical field. Begin revival." The process was delicate. Steam hissed as the preservation gel drained away. Machines beeped and monitors flashed. The man's chest rose weakly, then stilled, then rose again, stronger. His eyelids twitched. Vera felt her heart beat faster. Slowly, the human opened his eyes. They were gray, sharp, alert, filled with confusion and determination. He coughed once, gasping for air as if pulled from a dream too long. Valen signaled the medics to keep distance. Vera stepped forward, speaking carefully. "Can you understand me?" The man blinked, scanning faces around him. His voice was hoarse but steady. "Where am I?" "You are aboard the Galactic Union ship Halvern." Vera said gently. You've been in cryogenic sleep for approximately 500 years. He stared at her, disbelief in his eyes. 500? That's not possible, Vera hesitated. You are the last known human. Silence filled the room. The man looked away, his jaw tightening. The last? He took a deep breath. What happened to Earth? Vera looked at the floor. Your world fell silent. No signals. No survivors found. The galaxy believed your species was extinct. The man's gaze hardened. Extinct? He laughed weakly, shaking his head. You don't know humans very well, do you? Vera frowned. Excuse me? He looked directly at her, and in that moment there was something fierce, something alive in his eyes that made even the commander take a step back. Humans don't go extinct, he said quietly. We survive. The words sent a chill through her, not of fear, but of realization. For the first time in her life, Dr. Vera Talun felt the uncertainty of being wrong. That night she stood again in the observatory of the Halvern, watching the sleeping man through the glass. Around him, machines hummed softly, keeping his fragile life stable as his body recovered. Her notes lay open beside her, the theories she had built over decades, each line declaring humanity finished. But now those words seemed fragile, foolish even. She had looked into the eyes of history, and history had looked back. Vera whispered to herself, maybe they were never gone. Outside the window, the nebula swirled like silver smoke, and somewhere in the distance, the faint echo of a human heartbeat marked the beginning of a story the galaxy had forgotten.